Taylor Atwood and Russel Orhii are just over 1 week out from competing at the NAPF Championships, with Taylor now an 83 lifter and Russ making his 93 kilo IPF debut. With them being the 74 and 83 kilo kings for so long, the big question is, can they reclaim their titles as the strongest ever in their new respective weight classes, aka can they break the world records? It's no secret this is what the storyline is going into the championships. They're both looking for those Sheffield invites, of which there's only 2, and with both of them not being at Worlds this year, this is the way that they can get it. So I'm still riding high off of my Worlds predictions, where I predicted the 83 kilo podium perfectly down to how it was going to play out on deadlifts, and I picked Etienne El-Shera to pull off the upset win in the 120s. I'm just going to ignore the ones that I got wrong, but I'm back with some more specific predictions for what we're going to see out of Russ and Taylor at NAPFs this year. So number 1, Taylor Atwood is going to break the bench press world record. These are specific predictions. It's no fun making generic ones. You know me, I stick to my guns. I don't sit on the fence. Specific predictions is the way to go. Taylor Atwood is going to break the bench press world record. Now, the bench press world record is held by Owen Hubbard with 218.5 kilos or 482 pounds that he did all the way back in 2019 Euros. This is a screen grab I put here. Notably, this was before the elbow depth rule became a thing, which you can kind of see. I mean, it's actually not, as bad as I remember Owen Hubbard's elbow depth being, to be honest, but probably still wouldn't pass or would be borderline anyway. Taylor doesn't have that problem. I think Taylor takes the bench world record. The reason being, now, before I show you some of his lifts, Taylor is notorious for hiding his top sets, right? Which makes predicting what he's going to do pretty difficult. But he has shown us something, especially on his bench press. And the way that I'm sort of making these predictions, I'm comparing, what were his lifts that he showed us going into PA Nats versus what he did on the platform, and what are the lifts he's showing us now, because that's all we can go off, really. So the top bench press set that he did in his peak leading into PA Nats was 210 kilos, 463 pounds, which he didn't show us at the time. He showed us this after PA Nats. So 210, a bit of a quick pause, not super easy. And then at PA Nats, his bench press was amazing. He benched 216 kilos, which was crazy. Not quite enough to outbench Joey B, but 216 was enough for a PB, and he moved pretty smooth. He moved better than his 210 did in training. Now, he has showed, this is the only top set he showed us of this prep, 215 kilos. This was done recently, about a week and a half out from NAPFs, just a few days ago. And I would say that moved the same or probably better than his 210 did leading into PA Nats, right? So that's 215 kilos. And based on how he went from that 210 to that 216 at PA Nats, to go from this 215 to 219 is pretty reasonable, in my opinion, at NAPFs. Hell, you could even argue that at Nationals, he probably had an extra 3 kilos in him based on how smooth that 216 looked. So yeah, Taylor Atwood is going to chip that world record and take Owen Hubbard's world record after it stood for almost 6 years. Prediction number 2. Russel Orhii is going to get a squat overruled. There's going to be squat drama. The jury are going to get involved, but he's still going to walk away with the squat world record. So the squat world record in the 93s is held by Gavin Aiden, who also did it at NAPF, so it was last year, with 341 kilos or 752 pounds. Again, that was another instance where we had some jury intervention and jury drama. Gavin and Russ are both notorious for that on their squats, with their depth sometimes getting reds and sometimes not, and the jury having a high involvement in their squats. I think we're going to see a similar thing with Russ this year. So what I mean by that, and I'll show you some of his lifts that he showed us, he clearly has the strength for the world record and more. There's no doubting Russ's squat strength. I mean, here he is doing 355 kilos, 782 pounds. Now, this was about 2 months ago, but still, the strength for 15 kilos or 14 kilos above the world record is crazy. But I think what is going to happen is Russ is going to take the world record, chip it or add a few kilos on his second attempt before moving up and taking a bigger jump for his third. Now, I think one of two things are going to happen. Here's his most recent squat single, by the way, with 340 kilos, so pretty much the world record. This was done about a month out from NAPFs. But what I think he's going to do, he's either going to get his second squat red lighted, in which case he's going to be forced to not retake it on his third, but he's going to be forced to take a smaller jump on his third than what he would have wanted. Or he gets his second, and then his third gets red lighted or overturned. Either way, I think he walks away with the squat world record, but either way, I don't think it's going to be the planned third that they have on the day. In other words, I don't think he goes 3 for 3. He either finishes on his second or a more conservative, slightly reduced third after missing his second. That's my prediction for his squats. Now, full disclosure, I made this and I set this up yesterday, and in the meantime, Russ overnight for me, dropped this most recent squat set, 330 kilos, 727 pounds for a set of 3. Now, not gonna lie, this kind of made me question my prediction choices a little. 330 triple is crazy. He's probably gonna open. He probably could even open with the world record. There's no way he will. I doubt he will, but the strength is probably there. So yeah, 330 for a triple is crazy. So that kind of made me think, well, you know, maybe he is just going to murder that world record and send it up into the 350s and beyond. But the thing is, that doesn't change the fact that it's never a strength issue with Russ. It's always a depth issue, right? And he got his 3 squats in at Sheffield. 338 was the world record he set in the 83s, and he walked away with that. But then again, you could end up with a situation like Worlds, which was his meet prior to that last year, where he ended up on, I think, 321. Which is a pretty big difference after missing his third. So, yeah, either way he gets the world record, like I said. However, I think he's going to either just chip it or a few more kilos, depending on which attempt he gets red lighted for. But, you know, that's the way I see things happening. I would love to see him go 3 for 3 on squats. I just, you know, if you put a gun to my head and said, you know, which way you're going to go, I'm probably going to pick, well, I am going to pick what I'm picking now, which is for him to miss at least one of those squats out of the second and third attempt. Number 3, Taylor Atwood is going to break the total world record in the 83s with 890.5 on his second pull, on his second deadlift. I don't know if this is going to be a hot take or not, but second deadlift, Taylor Atwood is going to chip the world record. World record obviously is 890 by Joe Borenstein that he did at Worlds. That's the IPF world record. The overall world record is 900, which I'll get to. There's a prediction coming up on that as well, whether or not Taylor can beat that. But 890.5, second attempt. Why second attempt? Well, let's show you some of his squats. Now, again, you know, he doesn't really show us top sets here, but this was the heaviest squat that he showed us in the lead up to Nationals, and this was 285 going into Nationals, and he moved pretty damn easily. I think the most he did was 300, but he didn't show us that till after. Then at Nats, he squatted 700 pounds, 317.5 kilos. And it looked pretty good. Slow, hard, but I would argue you probably had maybe an extra 2.5 in there, at least. And fast forward to NAPF prep, he's showed the heaviest squat single he's showed us is, again, 285. This is what he posted just a day or two ago. So about a week and a half out of NAPFs at this point. 285 kilos, and it moved, again, just about the same as it did leading into Nationals. Maybe slightly better, you could say. If you go by his caption, this is the best it's ever felt for him. So that's something. So yeah, basically the same, well, not top set, because he wasn't a top set, he doesn't show us those, but the same, you know, biggest single he showed us leading into this meet as he was at PNATs. He squatted 700 pounds with seemingly more in the tank. He's feeling even better this time around. I think he's good for probably a bigger squat. So I'm predicting he's going to squat between 320 and 325. That's my range I'm giving him. Maybe 325 is slightly generous, but I think he's, at the very least, he's going to match the 700 pounds from Nats. But more likely than not, I think he adds a few kilos. Probably 320, maybe 322 and a half is where he ends up. I do think he's going to want to pace himself slightly ahead of where he was at Nationals on his subtotal, and I'll show you why. But 320, 325 is where I think his squat is going to end up. And his bench, I already said I think he breaks the bench world record with 219 on his third. So that's the bench that I'm giving him. Which means, if you do the math on that, the deadlift he would need to break the world record with 890.5 is between 346.5 to 351.5. Right? Now, this is obviously depending on where in that squat range he ends up. If he squats 325, he only needs, the lower amount. If he squats 320, he needs the higher amount. But that range, I think, is a doable second for Taylor. At PA Nats, he hit 876 on his second attempt deadlift of 342.5, right? And it took a big jump of 25 kilos to try and outpull Joey B, or beat Joey B's total. This time with the extra kilos on his subtotal, and with the mark that he's shooting for being less than a nationals, right? Because 900 isn't the world record he needs to break. It's 890. It's reasonable, I think, for him to go for somewhere in that range on his second attempt. 342.5 is the most he's ever pulled, but that looked easy. I'll show that in a second, but that looked easy at nationals. The reason why I think he goes his second is because I think he's out to make a statement. I think he's aiming for 900. I don't just think he's out there for 890.5. He said leading into Worlds that he's already got a number. This was before Worlds. He already had a number in his mind that he wanted to hit at NAPFs. He wasn't going to share it, but he had a number. And then after Worlds, he said that he was not disappointed, but he expected more out of the 83s than just the 890 that they ended up with. So I think the number that Taylor had in his mind that he wanted to hit at NAPFs started with a 9. That's all I'm going to say. So to do that, I think he clinches the world record in his second and then jumps to try and break Joey B's 900 overall world record as the biggest 83 total ever. Which is my fourth prediction. Taylor, after breaking the world record in his second, is going to pull for 900 plus on his third attempt, but he doesn't quite get it. I think 890.5 will be there, but I think 900 plus, maybe not yet, right? Or the strength probably is there, but I just think, he doesn't get it on this day. And Joey B's 900 still stands as the biggest 83 total ever, but the IPF world record will go to Taylor. So speaking of deadlifts, he hasn't shown us much deadlifts this prep, or he hasn't showed us, top singles and deadlifts really. The biggest deadlift he did leading into nationals was 320, which he only showed us this after anyway. And then, like I said, he pulled 342.5 at nationals on his second attempt to total 876. So he only needs 14.5 more kilos, the majority of which will come on his squat and bench. And he would only need to pull anywhere from 5 to maybe 10 kilos more than this on his second, which I think is reasonable. That 342.5 moved comfortably. I think anywhere up to 350, maybe 352.5 is a reasonable second attempt before he jumps to whatever he needs to total 901 kilos, I guess, right? Or 900.5. 367.5 was the deadlift on his third attempt at nationals. That was just too much on the day, and he didn't break the floor with it. I don't think he's going to need 367.5 on account of his improved subtotal, but either way, I think it's going to be too much. Is he going to break it off the floor this time and make it a better, or a closer attempt than at nationals? I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm not going to be that specific with my prediction. I think it's already specific enough. But yeah, I would love to see him go 900 plus. I think he's capable. I think he probably will eventually do it. Maybe not this time though. But the world record will go back to Taylor Atwood, the IPF world record, that is. But yeah, speaking of deadlifts, he's shown us this prep. Like I said, he hasn't shown us pretty much anything when it comes to singles. The most recent deadlift set he did show us was this 260 kilo set of 4. This was about 2.5 weeks out of NAPFs, so not that long ago. Again, this doesn't really give us too much because this is pretty submaximal. So yeah, not really too much we can make of this set, apart from he just looking strong as he always does. But yeah, those are my predictions for Taylor's performance. Bench and total world record, 890.5 total on his second, pulls for 900 plus, but misses on his third. Okay, on to Russ's prediction, and I mean, as my thumbnail revealed, I think only one of them walks away with the world record, and that is Taylor. I don't think Russ gets it. I think Russ goes 900 plus on his second deadlift, so he's in the 900s, which just 1 year ago would have been enough for the IPF world record in the 93s. In fact, it was only at NAPF's last year when Gavin Aiden first brought us into the 900s as a 93, right? Totaling 901 in the same meet where he took the squat world record. So it's crazy that since then it's now at 917.5, and we've had several other 93s cross into the 900 kilo club. But yeah, Ross is in the 900s. However, he falls just short of the world record on his final pull. He loads up the number he needs to total 918, 917.5 being the IPF world record held by Emil Krastev. He loads up 918, or whatever deadlift he needs for that, but I don't think he gets it. I think the grip is what gives out again. I think he misses the deadlift that would break the world record. So let's break this down. So his bench press, the biggest bench we've seen from him is this 215 kilo bench, which was done about 2 months ago, the same time he did that huge squat. His bench has had made huge improvements actually since his most recent meet, or the meets before. His most recent meet was already a huge improvement. I think he did 202.5 at Sheffield. I think he's good for definitely more than that this time again on account of the higher weight class. The most recent bench single he's showed us, this was about 2 weeks ago, was this 205 kilo rep, which wasn't super easy, super smooth, wasn't too dissimilar looking actually to 215, but probably done in a more fatigued kind of state, right? Either way, he's definitely good for 200 plus, 215 being the top end, maybe 210 being a reasonable, safe choice. But in terms of his squat, like I said, I'm sticking with my guns in that prediction, despite how strong that 330 triple looked. I think he's either going to get red light or get his second attempt taken away, either by the jury or just reds, and take a more conservative third, or he's going to get his second and then not get his third. Either way, he's going to walk away with either a chip on the world record or a few kilos. So I'm predicting between 341.5 to 346.5 is a squat that he ends up with, based on whether or not it's his second or his third that he gets and how much he wants to chip it by. A lot of factors here, right? Making a lot of assumptions / educated guesses, but I think that's the range he gets on squats. His strength is good for a lot more. I think Russ is definitely capable. The strength is there for him to break the world record. Hell, I think the strength is there for him to be the first 93 to total 930 and hit 10 times body weight. Actually did a video talking about the 93s that are looking to hit 10 times body weight. I'll leave a link to that. Russ was definitely one of those people. I just think it doesn't quite happen yet. He hasn't really been bulking into the 93s for all that long, right? It was only, a few months ago he was still supposed to do World Games in August as an 83, right? It wasn't that long ago that he decided to commit to the bulking and actually go 93 and pull out of World Games. But for now, I think that's where his squat number ends up. Based on the benches that I just showed you, I think a reasonable bench is between 210 and 215. 215 being his, top end if he's able to bring that to the platform. But based on how he moves on the day, potentially he'll go a bit more conservative towards the 210, maybe even slightly lower. Although given that he's going to lose a few kilos on his squats, I think he's probably going to have to make it up on the bench. So, I wouldn't be surprised to see him go 215 or maybe even a bit more if he's feeling amazing on the day. But if you do the math on that, similar to what we did on Taylor's attempts, based on whether or not you take the top end squat and the top end bench or the bottom end based on those ranges I've predicted, the deadlift he would need to total 918 kilos would be between 356 and 366, right? So getting to the high sevens, around 800 pound territory. Now the thing with Russ is that is the exact number or the exact range that captures his top end deadlifts, right? And that is the exact range at which his grip becomes a bit iffy when he comes to his training deadlifts, right? He's never deadlifted that in competition before. I think, 340, 350, I want to say is the most he's done. But he's done above that or, several in that range before in the gym. But it's always a 50-50 whether or not he can hold on to it when he does it, right? So perfect example of that. Here he is doing a 365 kilo deadlift about 2 months ago. And classic example of this, he has the strength to pull it, but he can't quite hang on to it. And this is a gym lift, not under meet conditions or meet stresses or whatever else. Now, the most recent deadlift single that he showed us is his 355 kilo deadlift that he did just a few days ago, so about 2 weeks out from competing at NAPFs. 355, and this moved a lot better, and in fact he was able to lock this out successfully and hang on to it, right? So that's why I think, based on the squat and bench projections that I have for him, a 356 to a 366 deadlift is asking a bit much. I think again, if I had to bet on it and my life was on the line, I'm probably betting that he drops it, which pains me to say. I'm the biggest Ross fan there is, and I would love nothing more than to see him walk away with the world record and get that Sheffield invite potentially, or put his name in the ring for potential Sheffield invites. I just think that because of his squats, the squats not quite going his way, he's forced to overreach on the deadlifts and load more than what he would have wanted, and because of that, he's not going to be able to lock it out. And yeah, like I said, biggest Ross fan in the world. I mean, I still think he was robbed of his Sheffield pull. I still think he totaled 883 and should have podiumed at Sheffield. But hey, I think it's, this time we're going to see much of the same thing happen on his final pull there. But like I said, I think eventually he will definitely get it, a bit more time in the 93 kilo class, maybe a few more months, next few meets. Definitely I see him hitting 930 or breaking the world record. But there you have it. Those are my predictions for Taylor Atwood and Ross's performances at upcoming NAPFs. Now, NAPFs, there are obviously other lifters competing. There are several other, high-level lifters. But in terms of elite-level championship lifters, Taylor and Ross are definitely in the highlights, hence why I focus on them in these predictions. But you got like Robert Lazarin in the 120 pluses. Matt Venya, shout out to Matt Venya. He's commented on a few of my videos, so keen to see what he puts up in the 120s. Travis Pinheiro in the 59s, potentially going towards 600 kilos. So there are a few interesting lifters there, but definitely all eyes will be on Taylor and will be on Russ to see if they can get those world records and put a strong case forward as to why they can be invited to Sheffield, which, let's face it, we would love to see both of them back at Sheffield. But yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know if you think I was on point with my predictions or not. And we'll see in just over 1 week time.